Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Six Rings King Show on a new night, Monday night now, baby. We're really excited, actually, to have Eric McLean on the show here, college football analyst, co-host of The Huddle. Coach, yes! All right!
First touchdown of the year.
Miami Hurricanes, yeah. You know the name already. It's Mercy. Ha ha. It's a six-ring Kane show. Can't forget the name though. Got Jazz, Blue, Vision, DJ, break the game code. Ain't no changing them, ain't no breaking them. Real Portland live from the Hard Rock Stadium. Ball 14 for the orange and green. We see the six-ring champs. It's more than a dream. This is life on the field. Beyond 100 yards, a hurricane that's never still put a damage to your squad.
What's wrong with us? Seriously.
What's wrong with us? We're Miami Hurricanes fans.
Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show, a show dedicated to Miami Hurricane sports, featuring the legendary Larry Bluestein, Jazz Santana, Vish, and Danny Gillette. Let's go Canes.
Hello. Welcome to the Six Rings Kane Show. I am obviously not Jazz Santana. He might be making a surprise appearance, but looks like it'll be the three of us today. Blue, how's it going, man?
Doing good, guys. It's what a time it is to be a sports fan, especially here in South Florida. Men and women going to the big dance, baseball team with a big weekend in ACC. Spring training. 16-year-old catchers and with the Padres now, and I couldn't believe that 16-year-old catcher for the Padres in spring training. Wow, there's some good jokes going on there, talking about this. Mom had to take him to practice. But yeah, no, this is a good time. Spring football. We have spring break coming up, and I'm excited. I'm going to get over there probably next week to watch them practice. So it's things are coming out. From what I hear down. For the first couple of days, everybody is excited. It's kind of a feeling out process for all the new coaches. And a lot of hard work going on. And I just don't think a lot of the kids coming back were satisfied with the way the season ended and having to watch teams like New Mexico and Eastern Michigan play in bowl games. I don't care which ones, but they were playing. And I think that's going to be a focal point this year is to get much better each and every year. And I think it starts this spring.
Awesome. Yeah. What about you, DJ? How's it going, man?
It's going good. I'm excited. Like Blue said, it's a busy time of year. A lot of March Madness basketball. We have spring football coming up or already here in some cases. And, it's just, I see in my neck of the woods the pathway towards warmer weather. I live up in the Northeast, and we're going to get some snow tomorrow, so it's not warm yet, but there is light at the end of the tunnel, so I'm just happy for some warmer weather to be hopefully around the corner.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. I am going to Albany to watch this basketball team play, so
nice.
Oh, that's going to be fun.
I'm going to avoid – it looks like I'll avoid it because it looks like the bad snow's coming through tomorrow.
Yeah, it comes through before you get there.
Yeah, so we'll see. God, I hope they at least win the first game. I don't know what I'm going to do in Albany all weekend if they don't, but travel plans remain contingent on winning that game, so I'll be moving flights around and eating a bunch of money to get out of there if we lose.
A capital, so there's got to be something.
Well, I think that's why it was actually an easy flight for me because I think so many politicians like from the New York State come to Washington to lobby. So it was just a bunch of puddle jumpers going back and forth. I was like, wow, there's so many flights because it's capital to capital. But
unlike here, where Tallahassee's probably you could fly to Israel for which you fly to Tallahassee. So
that was an easy flight and a lot of flights. So hopefully it just the weather doesn't impact, which it shouldn't. Shout to some people in the chat, Fernie. Good to see you, man. Gus. Mr. Overdose as well, and Al Doberling.
Hey, Al.
Hey, Al. Sorry if I mispronounced your name there. So I guess before we kind of get into it, I want to definitely unpack some of what Blue talked about. We'll also talk a little bit about the hoops teams because it's a big weekend for them. But first, let me go ahead and since I always yell at Jazz for not doing this in a prompt manner, let's go ahead and do PrizePicks. All right, so shout out to our sponsor, PrizePicks.com. Kind of our original sponsor, long-term sponsor of the program. We're running a deal with them, which we've been running, which is they'll match your deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the offer code 5. That's FIVE. You can see it scrolling across the bottom. It's available in most states and municipalities. I got to throw that in there because DC's not a state, but it is available here. So if you're in Orange, you're good to go here. But basically, it's simple. If you ever, frankly, bet and you've done a parlay, it's very similar to that. Except you're just betting over-unders on statistics. The more it's 2 to 5 things you can bet on. The more you layer in there, the more the higher the upside is. Just again, very similar to just a parlay in a normal gambling sense. So. If you have not taken part yet, it's a really fun way to make some money and also to enjoy the games differently, especially if, let's say your Miami Heat aren't really, ringing the bell for you anymore. You can still watch the NBA and get it here on PrizePicks. So anyway, that's PrizePicks.com, offer code 5, that's FIVE, sign up today and match your first deposit up to $100. Check out our sponsor, support the show, and have some fun.
Yep.
All righty. So, Larry, actually, there's a question for you, which I guess I'll just let you answer.
I'm still here. It's a process. It's still getting, it's been a year and breathing is still not where it was. And my taste is not fully back, but I'm on this side of the dirt. So that's, I got to be happy for that. But yeah, still doing a lot. Have camps every weekend and, we get good. I was up at Under Armour, like I told you guys last week, and then Rivals is in 2 weeks, but it's down in South Florida. Thank goodness, because I think what they're doing is they figure that the South Florida kids will travel like to Orlando or Tampa. So, but not everybody wants to come to South Florida. But there's a lot of targets. A lot of targets in that that's coming the Rivals, and I know that a lot of excitement for recruiting this time of year, and sorry to be long-winded with that answer, but
no, it's good. It's good. We're obviously very happy you're on this side of the dirt. I've never quite heard that health assessment phrase that way, but I think if everyone was kind of with us last year, as kind of Larry was going through a lot, it's awesome to have you back on the show and full of energy. So I'm happy you're able to be long-winded.
Yeah.
That itself is awesome. So
I could honestly listen to you tell stories all day. I really could. I could name you a Miami player, and you could probably tell me a story, and I would be extremely entertained.
Yeah,
I really would.
Well, the whole thing is now people are looking back at some of the past teams and back into the 70s and the 80s, and you go on some of those websites, and I like that because you look all those years, and last year we said may have been one of the worst rosters they've had, even back in the 70s, because you remember in the 70s they beat Texas and they beat USC and they beat Georgia when all those teams were highly ranked. Knocked off University of Texas, 73, and we were at the game. But I'm just saying, even though they weren't highly thought of, nationally, they had their 8-2-1 seasons and they had their 7-3 seasons. But you look at some of the players that came out of that era, and the Chuck Formans and the Ted Hendricks, who arguably, in my estimation, is still the best Hurricane ever, a 3-time consensus All-American. Didn't have the studs that the Jerome Browns and Ray Lewis and such, and Ned Reed had to play around him. He had only one other. Eddie Dunn was the only other guy who played in the NFL when he was on that team. So you look back at him, and I'm really encouraging. I told a lot of people in Miami, you got to get him to that paradise or whatever they call it now. Why? Why wouldn't he? His name's up there. All the kids, they wouldn't know him, but I mean, here's he'd probably easily be the most photographed guy of the day, and he's still active and big Raider guy and comes back to South Florida a lot. And I'd like to see, because that's part of the history that made this team what it is. I look, sometimes I'll run, some of the older, schedules like from the 60s. And I mean, if they played some of those schedules these days, everyone would like commit suicide. I mean, the Alabamas and, Penn State's in a year and, playing USC and Georgia and, all in one season. And, back in the day, I mean, Miami was an independent. So they had to pretty much fish out of 10 games. So it was never easy, but they always knew they could get Alabama every year. They knew Notre Dame would pop in there. They play Navy, they play Army. And it just shows you how beneficial being in a conference is, because you have 8 games pretty much, taken care of for you. And, but I look at some of these other early schedules like Ohio State. That's embarrassing. So with some of the teams that they play, at least Miami plays A&M, outside the conference, but they don't. Some of these teams are going to really, they're going to be 12-0, and they're going to go to the playoffs, and it's going to be the same thing over and over and over again. I think next year changes a little bit. Not this coming year, although this coming year you'll see. I don't think UCF will be making any national championship claims for a while. I saw their schedule. Holy moly! Finally they're playing some. But I'm talking about when Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC. They raised the bar a little bit, and and then we don't know the uncertainty what's going to happen to the Pac-12 after those two teams leave, because certainly the Utahs and the Oregons and the Washingtons and Stanfords certainly are very they're good teams to have in your conference for a number of reasons. But what happens with the ACC? I still hear Miami rumblings of Miami going into the Big Ten. It'll be the Big 30 by that time they get there.
That'll be tough because USC and UCLA are coming in next year as well. So that's
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, what USC and UCLA mean to that conference now is the recruiting, because now a Rutgers or a Maryland could start using Southern California, as a base, because even though they may play them once every 4 years or so, at least they're playing them and they're going to be visible in their conference. And that's the one thing that, has made Notre Dame what they were, because they play that global schedule from West Coast to East Coast and in the South. And I think that's going to be beneficial. And I'm anxious to see what happens to Miami. Does the ACC stay together? I certainly feel that they have enough, teams. I think they have to. I always felt that South Carolina should go in the ACC, where you could create a Clemson rivalry. You could create a Carolina rivalry.
That'd be fantastic.
I always felt about that. And, because now you have Virginia Tech, and you have the Carolina teams, and Clemson's kind of the only team in South Carolina, in the ACC. And then down here you have South Florida. You got, Florida and Florida State and Miami. And I just think that there's a lot of looking forward. I think just by the fact that they're expanding the playoffs, that there's going to be something new every year. Just like this year in baseball, they took the shift away. So,
not in college yet. They're still piled up on one half of the field. To Mr. Ovidos's point here, that scheduling, that was a lot more fun. And I'm hoping, good point. It's totally different when you're playing outside in freezing weather. It's a lot of your fancy off. There's a reason Michigan plays the way they play. That's gonna get through the seasons. But I'm hoping this playoff expansion will lead to more cross cross country games because
I agree.
Because
I
one
agree.
loss when there's 12 teams in the playoffs, or one loss is not going to ruin your season. Whereas before,
Right.
it's like you got to go undefeated. You're not going to play anyone because it's not worth the risk.
And it's also a good recruiting tool. Like if you're a good program, even if you don't necessarily, are a national championship contender every single season, you can at least offer up the prospect of playing in the expanded college football playoff. And I think that means something to some kids as well. Obviously, they want to win the whole thing, but I think, just the idea that they could potentially make it to the national championship game, and it's not just, the Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, et cetera. I think that's going to mean something too.
Yeah,
I agree.
The interesting thing for the ACC is these schools have kind of given away all their rights. There's no easy way to get out of this, and they're locked into a long TV contract that's way undervalued. So this is just like ESPN's getting them for cheap, and there's no way out of it. So even though, FSU last week basically wrote a sternly worded letter, it doesn't mean anything. And, I do think Miami would be most attractive to the Big Ten. One of the things that happens with the Big Tens, the way their network works, when they expand into new states, they get a multiplier on their TV contract based on the population of the state, which is why they went big into California now. Like they're going to clean up on that just automatically.
They have the Midwest. They have
if they can if they get Miami, they're now moved into Florida.
They have the Midwest. They have Florida, and then they have the West Coast and New York and New Jersey because of Rutgers.
Well, they have New Jersey is what counts because that's technically where Rutgers is. They do have that market, although the Big Ten is already the biggest market in the Northeast anyway. Like that is because all their alums end up working like on Wall Street and stuff. Yep. So they're just like they saturate the Big Ten. The Big Ten saturates New York anyway. There's not really a college there, but like their alums are. But yeah, Florida's a good market for them to break into, and Miami's an easy to travel to. Distance is a pain, but easy to get to. It's a 3-hour flight from basically most of the Big Ten, other than the two new schools, and that's also why they went to the LA ones. It's easy to get to LA. It's easy to travel there because you got for the football teams. It doesn't matter. You're gonna charter a plane and go, but a lot of these non-revenue sports, like you got to be able to fly commercials sometimes, and just having the major metropolitan centers makes it easier to travel to. So I do think Miami would be attractive. I don't see how they get out of that TV contract. I think the ACC really needs to expand to break that contract. And, there's not much. I mean, do they really go for like Oregon and Washington and that all the way, like literally the opposite end of the country?
But they could get Notre Dame in West Virginia.
Well, I mean, if they could get Notre Dame, they would get Notre Dame. I think that's why they've been complacent. They've been holding out on this Notre Dame dream, and everyone else has passed them by because they've been basically holding a spot for Notre Dame and not really willing to add because they're going to get Notre Dame, and then they're never.
Well, Notre Dame has their own TV contract, don't they? Like they have their own.
Did.
I could see why they wouldn't want to leave that.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's an ACC school and everything but football.
Yep.
So they still, and I think they have some exclusivity there, but there's just like to me it's a pipe dream. Notre Dame's never going to join as a full member, and they need to just move on. And frankly, they should just. I mean, I'm honestly wondering if the non-football sports are even worth it. They should say either join or get out, go somewhere else.
No, I agree.
Like and because I don't think like Notre Dame's basketball program is that valuable. Or their baseball certainly isn't. Like to me they should have played hardball with them, but instead they're like kind of stringing them along, trying to hope, hey, one day Notre Dame's going to come over here, because that would be a game changer for the contract. If they expand, they can break the contract. It'll probably be the most expensive. They could put Miami Notre Dame on TV every year, and it would explode. Like so.
Notre Dame Clemson there.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, no, it would be a complete game changer, but I don't think that's realistic. The other thing, I mean, they should look at is there are schools in Dallas and kind of a little bit less successful in Houston, but those are huge markets where if you expand into, you can get a lot of eyeballs on your product and a lot of recruiting angles there, and you're getting your team showcased in major, like imagine how big it would be for Wake Forest to be in Dallas every other year or something and showing them. Like Miami gets national exposure anyway, Florida State does, Clemson does, but some of those middle tier programs could really benefit from having, hey, because just like with Florida, right, those second and third tier Texas kids can play, And hey, we come and play in your state every other year. We play a bunch of games here. You can come to Duke or Wake Forest or even Georgia Tech because they get dominated locally by Georgia. And hey, your family will be able to see you play. This is a major conference, and I think that's potentially where they can expand. Other than, like I said, decide to just screw geography. We're going to go the opposite end of the corner because I think the only attractive pieces for them out of the Pac-12 would really be the Washington and Oregon school, probably just Washington and Oregon, not the states.
Right.
But,
well, you made a good point about, the teams have their own charters, but getting fans, that they don't have to spend $1,100 on a round trip flight just to go to and you look at the SEC with the exception of Nashville, all the programs are in one horse towns. I mean, Gainesville, Starkville, Tuscaloosa, and it's not so easy to fly into those areas. I mean, yeah, there's adjacent cities like Atlanta to Athens, which is an hour away. And, and you have Birmingham, like 35, 40 miles away from Tuscaloosa. But at the same time, you have to think about your fan base, and they travel, and you don't want to put them in the poorhouse. I mean, but there's a lot of reasons why the ACC should take on, and you're right. Getting a TCU or a program like that in there would be great. Would be great for all sports because TCU plays, pretty good in basketball. They're really good in baseball all the time, and it's amazing because I look back in the 70s and the 80s, and they used to have this thing in the local paper on a Friday called the Bottom 10. And TCU was always like the number one team in the bottom 10, and how times have changed. And in Arlington now, it's a bigger area now, and Fort Worth, and, the Dallas area is all one, and great TV market. And that's why the Big Ten probably is giving USC and UCLA anything that they want because of getting that West Coast exposure, not just West Coast exposure in Palo Alto or Corvallis, but in LA where there's millions and millions of people. And I think it'd be good. You have Miami is no matter what, Miami's always going to be a product that everybody wants to come here. I mean, 12 Super Bowls and all that stuff couldn't be wrong. And all the major events and the Grand Prix now that they have down here. And I think that Miami is in a good position. I credit the new athletic director for upping the ante in all their sports, and they have. I just think that they need to add women's softball somewhere along the line, and I think they need to add wrestling because with the exception of Florida State and Georgia Tech, everybody else in the ACC has wrestling. Virginia has it. Virginia Tech, NC State, North Carolina, they're all wrestling powers, and doesn't take a whole lot. And, you get a Midwest coach and, maybe grab one person from the Florida area and start recruiting. Those kids would love to, and even the studs from Eastern Pennsylvania and in Indiana. I mean, they would love to come and wrestle down in South Florida in December and January. So there's a lot to be said. The new facility. I just think that the next couple of years, things are going to blow up. Football team's going to obviously be better, and they're going to continue to get better. And everything, I think, and even people who are not Miami fans will tell you, things are a lot better in college football when Miami's winning. And, as much as everybody may, quote unquote, hate them, they all know that when Miami's winning in football, the landscape changes a little bit. Positive.
And there's certain programs, like whether you love them or hate them, the Miamis, the Notre Dames, there's certain program names that draw attention to the sport, good or bad, and it makes for a fun rooting, atmosphere every Saturday, and in postseason play. And I think if Miami could get good again, I think that would be wonderful for the sport, because it would bring the program that we all knew as a very successful program to a younger generation, and kind of help propel it into the future.
Yeah, just
I
looking
agree.
through some of the comments, or if enough schools in the ACC agree to jump ship where there's no ACC to object. I don't know if that's actually realistic, just because there's enough core schools that'll never jump ship. I mean, I don't see the Carolina schools ever going
College won't.
anywhere. And I think that's and then you'd have to pay them like an exorbitant amount to get out. So
And Louisville and Syracuse are comfortable being in there, and
and not everyone's like Miami, Clemson, Florida State have options. A lot of these schools don't. North Carolina would, but they'll never leave where they get to run the conference, which is basically what happens here. So
Boston College already jumped from the Big East to the ACC, so I mean they're
but this is the thing, right? If there is a restructuring and a shakeout, there's a 0% chance Miami or Florida State gets left behind.
Right.
There is definitely a chance that Boston College and Syracuse. So they're gonna hold firm here because they could easily get, as a shakedown, end up as not a major program anymore. We saw that with the Big East teams and the Miami. You mentioned, leaving the Big East. When Miami left, that was kind of the end of the Big East as a major conference. And there were teams in there that were in a major conference that all of a sudden weren't.
UConn, I think, right?
It was UConn. Pitt left a little bit later. They hung around for a year. No, it was like Temple and Rutgers. Rutgers ended up back in the Big Ten, so that we made out better on that deal. But
they did.
There were these programs that were major programs, all of a sudden weren't, and some of them didn't even play football, and their basketball program had to go find homes. Like, it was messy, and you're looking at, some of these schools, frankly, are just historically just dragging on coattails because football is the king. You can be a great basketball program, it doesn't pay the rent. It's football. And these teams that no one cares about in football are exposed, and they know it. As bad as Miami's been, and Ben's definitely, it's a nice joke, but Miami's always relevant, whether they're good or not. And that's not the case for other programs. And so I think, there's exposure there, which I think would prevent a full collapse of the ACC, just because, there are a lot of programs that wouldn't have a good landing spot. So I think it's much more likely the ACC tries to expand than that, but actually I think they're probably just going to sit on their hands. They seem to be quite comfortable doing that for whatever reason, and getting ripped off on the on the TV contract seems to be the way things are going. In terms of adding UTSA, I just don't think they have any cachet to bring anything to the table. I think you need more than that.
I would add TCU before I add them.
Yeah, TCU. Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, because hilariously, the Big 12 TV contract is better than the ACC's now. So by breaking it and adding TCU, and this is, by the way, this is the new contract without Oklahoma and Texas. It's still bad. That's how bad the ACC contract is.
Well, here's the thing too. Now you've added Memphis, Orlando, Houston into the Big 12, so that that's a big deal. I think those are three really large markets.
Right. So, I mean, you're going to be in an arms race there for the ACC, and you're like, hey, let's try to poach these schools. What can you get out of ESPN or whoever the TV partner is going to be when you're able to break the contract to justify that? And probably a lot, to be honest, but you'd have to also convince someone to come with, and the bigger fish you go for, it's just like in recruiting. If you go for the 5-star, it's hard to get them. So I do think the Pac-12 is still ripe to maybe grab the Seattle market, for example. And you know what? Maybe even like Colorado.
And Colorado doesn't have enough to offer. Their sports programs are horrible across the board.
They have Dion.
I don't. Yeah, that's not.
We're all gonna enjoy that complete. I think we all know where that's going.
You said that the Pac-12 doesn't have the Seattle market, but what about Washington? Where do they like?
No, that is the Seattle market. No,
okay.
I was not saying if you want to go to the Seattle market, you can get Washington. The Arizona schools are in play. There's stuff out there, but that is a long way away from the ACC. It's a long way away. It's all the way across the country.
Yeah, there's nothing Atlantic about any of those schools.
Yeah.
I mean, It's kind of interesting because for college hockey, for example, Notre Dame joined Hockey East. Now, Hockey East is all New England schools, so when push comes to shove, geographically, it may not matter in the end. It's all about the money. So as far fetched as it may seem, it could happen.
No, it
Yeah.
could. I mean,
Definitely.
no, I mean Maryland and USC are in the Big Ten. That's the exact opposite ends of the country.
Yeah.
So, but to do that essentially geography break and move.
Yeah. No,
Are
it's
you
not easy.
You doing that for Arizona? This isn't USC or UCLA. They're gone. So you're really talking about like the schools the Big Ten decided they didn't want. So it might actually be worth, at least in the short term, for the ACC because they can get out of the TV contract. Just even renegotiating with the existing footprint would be a huge amount of money that they're currently not getting out. So basically adding a school could be a game changer. There's not a lot of good options right now. So I expect them to kind of sit on their hands and see where it goes. Well, I didn't plan to do 30 minutes on on college football realignment, but it's the offseason. Let's talk a little bit about our current Canes. And so Blue, you had kind of touched on at the intro about how kind of the new staff is coming together and kind of the work being put in. So I will say, we heard a lot of this last year as well. Man, we've never worked this hard, and then we saw the product on the field. So do you sense that there's something different this time? And like what do you see that is, because I know you're very plugged in. What do you see as different than last year at this time when we all were very excited and getting all these reports about, man, now they're really working hard this time, and then
Yeah, well, I think you're 100% right, because last year at this time, here's a Coach Gaddis who was obviously a hot commodity, being the Broyles Award winner and one of the best, assistant coaches in America. So we were really excited to see him. I don't know if anybody was as excited for Coach Steele. They kind of figured, here's Charlie Strong at 61. He's been a head coach. He's been there, kind of done that. Does he have that energy? I think that's the one thing that's different. You have guys who are at that age of their careers, whether it would be Dawson or a Tim Harris or any of the guys that they got in the offseason. They just seem like they're more plugged in to turning this program around rather than just, using Miami as a destination. I mean, we all saw that, Guidry, a fiery guy, people already talking about him already. I mean, I heard Cam Kinchins after one of the practices, and somebody asked about him. He goes, hey, he's keeping everybody on their toes, and that was missing last year. So you see the difference there. You see the difference already with, with the Tim Harris working with, and not to say Kevin Smith wasn't a good coach, because he was, but I don't think he really wanted to be here. I think it fit him to be here more than, than the University of Miami fitting him. I think it fits Tim Harris. I think it fits Kevin Beard. Nicholson too. I mean, this is a guy that no nonsense player, no nonsense coach. And the Corey Flaggs of this world got to be elated, because here's a guy that's going to teach them things, not to take anything away from Charlie, because I like Charlie Strong. He's a good dude, and I've known him for a long time, but I don't think the energy was there last year. When you're head coach, and I said it often, the Jazz and I would be in the press box for our pregame show, and I would look down, and Mario Cristobal was the most animated guy. That shouldn't be. All those assistant coaches should, they should be in the ears, and everybody should be, I'm not saying rah, but, you got to have energy. In Miami, oftentimes in that Middle Tennessee State game, holy mackerel, a youth football league team had more energy than that. And those are the things, there's a lot to be said for that. And yeah, they, Steele had 37 years of coaching experience, and I'm sure that Guidry doesn't, but at the same time, he's a fresh face that has been establishing himself for quite a few years. And I think that's what Mario was going after. We were sitting here, blaming, oh gosh, he's taking so long. But I think he kind of targeted in his own mind coaches who would change the landscape of the team and not just come in and, be another dude that, like last year. I mean, he already knows that in Mirabal that he's got somebody who's going to have his back forever. So, and then the guy's a really good coach and he knows the offensive line. And I think that's the one surprise when a lot of these guys have never met him before and see that he's like 5'6" or 5'7", and they go, man, he's an offensive line coach. But then they see how much he knows, and as well as I do, guys, that any position, it's you're better because of the technique that it doesn't matter who's teaching it to you. It's just that, they're drumming it to you where you're going to maximize that 6'6", 320-pound frame. I mean, there used to be a joke going around, like, oh, we got a 6'6", 320-pounder, but can't play football. He'd be a great bouncer, but he couldn't, he can't play football. And I think that's what Miami has. That's their target. This last class, the transfer portal, looking ahead. And I think I think we see a lot more energy this spring, and it'll carry right through to the summer.
Would you say that this coaching staff in particular is more technically focused than the last group, as in paying attention to the fundamentals, execution, and things like that? I'm not saying that the last staff completely blew that off, but would you say that there's a sense of, trying to practice good habits and, translating that over? Because, at times last year, and you mentioned the Middle Tennessee game, the team looked like you said, disinterested and kind of disoriented and kind of not focusing on the little things. Do you sense that there's more of an emphasis on that with the hungrier staff?
DJ, you bring up a good point, because, and the one thing that I say is last year, and I've said this over and over on this program and on our weekly get-togethers, that Mario Cristobal, when I first met with him last May, and we sat down and we talked, he said to me, he says, what do you think the reason why Miami gets these guys and they don't really work out? And I said, well, the truth is they're not being coached up. I mean, they're really not learning the X's and O's. And he looked at me and goes, that'll never be a problem here. And I think the fact that there was a problem last year, that he was angered by that. And because, he comes in with all guns blazing and he tells you what he thinks should be done. And then the first year, it really wasn't done. It really wasn't. I mean, other than Kitchens and a couple of other people, who got better, than the year before? Not a whole lot of guys. Corey Flagg remained consistent, but he's going to be the same type of dude. He's going to make plays. He's not going to wow you with his size. But I think that's the big thing. The coaching staff that they have now will individually take it upon themselves to ensure that their group raises the bar. And I don't think you had that last year. I mean, you had that out of your offensive line coach, maybe a die because he's been around situations. But I don't think that Charlie, or I don't think that Steele or some of the other coaches that were on hand, I just don't think that they were, we knew Gaddis when he wasn't listening to anybody. I mean, that can't be. You just can't have that. I mean, you can't have a coach who's a renegade. You got to be kidding me. I mean, you've got to be on the same page. You've got, you're all playing for the same deal. And I have a feeling that, just talking to some people, that Dawson's just been completely opposite of what has happened. He's reaching out to Mirabal. He's, calling Kevin into his office and talking to him. He's talking a little bit with Timmy Harris. And remember, he's the quarterback coach now. So he doesn't have to go through another channel there. So from the offensive standpoint, I think that everybody's buying in. Defensively, you have high energy people with a lot of knowledge. People don't know Nicholson. I've covered that guy since, back in the day, and he was a great football player. He's been a tremendous coach, and he's got a lot of pride about himself. And, and you look there, and then now with Jason Taylor, and I could tell you firsthand, people go, oh, Jason Taylor is prima donna. No, he's not. I've watched him when he was at St. Thomas Aquinas, and the man actually, he was angry after they lost. if they didn't lose much, but when they did lose. And I saw him firsthand change kids around. I tell you about Nick Bonito. I tell you about about Dallas, who now starts for Alabama, and he only had him for a year. And you have guys now on staff that are going to teach the game of football, and not just say, "Oh, we got this team, let's watch film." No, you can watch all the film you want. If you don't have the technical savvy and you don't have the knowledge of playing a position, you're gonna get the 5 and 7 years like you got last year. That's why I say, even though Miami's schedule, and a lot of people don't understand, it's challenging. To win 7 games is going to be challenged because, like I said, I know those 3 out of the last 4 games, and I'm even going to include Boston College. Miami doesn't do well up there. When's the last time they won there? When Ed Reed was it's been a long time. So, and you got FSU at the tail end. Those 2 games in the middle are going to be really tough with Clemson and North Carolina. So Miami's got to and they'll get off to a good start. The A&M game obviously is going to be a challenge, but I still think, Miami knows in their heart of hearts, even as bad as things were last year, Vish, you were there. So, they could have won and easily won that game. So, yeah, I think that they'll get off to a really good start, and then the key games will be those 2 games in the middle, and that's we'll see what happens. But they can't not go to a bowl game this year. If they do, it's gonna kind of reflect on the 2024 class in recruiting.
Yeah, and just I think one of the things last year is we got and I was certainly probably the most guilty of this on the show, but we saw the names and we looked at the resumes and we hired the resumes. We didn't hire the people, and the staff was incoherent. There wasn't a clear separation of duties because everyone was out of position essentially. Because if you hire an offensive coordinator to be your quarterback's coach, you're going to want input on the offense. Maybe you should think about that and figure out, is that going to work well with my offensive coordinator? I understand you say Gaddis was renegade. He is the offensive coordinator. If that's the way he operates, you frankly need to fill out the rest of his staff with coaches that are comfortable with that. Instead, you kind of, you had Pons, who's used to actually calling the plays. You're telling him not only you're not calling the plays anymore, you're not going to get input. And I think that was the whole staff. Charlie Strong is a linebackers coach. Like Steele, like you said, has been around forever. I think it was a combination of, I think some of them, and I don't think this applies to Gaddis, by the way, but I think some of them were lazy. Like this was kind of a retirement job. I'm going to go down to Miami and chill. I think that was probably more a case on the defensive side than the offensive side. I think the offensive side just broke, frankly. Like, I don't think Gaddis was being lazy. I think he couldn't figure it out. He closed off from the rest of his coaching staff. There was a lot of tension there. If you're not if you're the offensive coordinator and not the quarterback's coach, and you don't have a good relationship with the quarterback's coach, you're not going to be able to pass the football. That's just how are you going to move the ball, right? So I think that was a big mess. But I do think several of the defensive coaches, especially, were kind of like showed up with very impressive resumes and with what they felt was nothing to prove and weren't willing to put the work in to prove it. And that's why you see several of them gone. Because if you think about it, like Cristobal had the easy option of saying, Charlie Strong, you're the defensive coordinator now. Steele went to Bama, and he instead essentially told him to get out. So I think he learned his lesson from that, and I'm hoping there's just there's a million things a football program has to do to be successful, and there's a limited number of coaches. This is not the NFL where you have like a third down offensive coach that just coaches third downs. Like they literally specialize in the NFL. They have coaches for everything. You don't have that in college. So you got to make sure everyone knows these are my responsibilities. And it changes program to program. It changes based on the makeup of the staff because different coaches are able to do different things. And I'm hoping, and we'll kind of know, in the fall, but I'm hoping that in constructing this staff, he learned lessons from what he did last year, which is to get a lot of really great coaches on paper that did not have clear definitions of what they were supposed to be doing and did not really, there wasn't a clear separation of duties. There was not a clear, okay, you're responsible for this. He's responsible for that. I felt like everyone was kind of stepping on each other's toes, and you saw that out on the field. And frankly, once you start getting that tension in the coaching staff, it filters down to the players. This first half of the year, I still go back to this a lot. Middle Tennessee was bad, but even in that game, A&M, right? All these games in the first half of the year, we were moving the ball up and down the field and not scoring. Remember, that was our big problem. How do we fix this red zone offense? Because if we can fix this red zone offense, we're going to have one of the best offenses in the ACC. Because we were like second or third in yardage and ninth in scoring. And it's like, all we have to do is get the scoring to catch up with the yardage. Unfortunately, the yardage caught up with the scoring. And it went the other direction. And that was probably some of the strain of kind of failing. Like, I mean, how many times did we fail inside the 5-yard line at the beginning of the year? By the end of the year, we weren't getting to the 5-yard line. The bottom fell out. But, that speaks to staff cohesion and kind of chemistry and not being able to work through challenges. Basically, this team got punched in the face and folded as a program. Like the players did and the coaches did. Blue called out a few that did not fold, like Cam Kinchin's right to the end. Even that last game, I remember, Will Mallory, he fumbled against Pitt, but he was playing so hard. I think he knew it was his last game, and he was like, I'm going out. I'm not going out without putting in the effort. And he was really, the fact that it's noticeable when you're watching these games, like that guy's really trying. That's bad.
Oh yeah.
You shouldn't notice that one guy is trying or a handful are trying, because it should be all of them. It shouldn't be that obvious. But you could tell which guys were really like, wow, that guy's putting in a lot of effort today. And that's a bad thing, because it shouldn't be obvious, because they should all be doing that. So
yeah.
So I'm hoping for a lot more cohesion. It kills Mario of all people and his core beliefs to watch that product out on the field, to watch them getting out toughed and out efforted. There's a lot I think he'll be willing to tolerate, but that is like his core belief is you put the work in, you outwork your opponent, and you go out there and you play really hard. And we did basically the opposite. So I think, it's a good thing the staff turned over, and hopefully these are not the big names, right? He's kind of gone the other direction. And one of the things I always point to is if there was a right way to do this, everyone would just do it. There's no easy answers in football. And frankly, I hate to say this, most coaching hires fail, right?
Yep.
Period. So we went and got a proven coach who, taken a team to the cusp of the playoffs, won the Rose Bowl. And we put together a staff that failed. I mean, that's what happened. So all you can ask in that situation, it's not to do a specific thing, because if we knew what the answer was, first, we would be running the program. Second, if there was an answer that was like, oh, that's going to work, everyone would just do it. It wouldn't be hard. It's hard because it's not obvious. It's hard because Bill Belichick can fail in Cleveland and then become the winningest coach in NFL history in New England, right? That's why it's hard. You watch Cleveland, there's no indication that this guy is going to dominate for 2 decades in New England. There's no indication. That's why
same thing with Nick Saban. They were on the same staff.
That's why. His coaching tree permeated everything now, right? Bill Belichick's influence on college and professional football is unbelievable, and he failed and got fired in Cleveland. You just can't tell. So all you can really ask is the obvious problems, they identify them and they try to fix them. And he has gone a completely, whether by choice or by force, because it could have been you couldn't get anyone else to come in here. That's definitely on the table. But either way, he's gone a completely different direction. To Blue's point, these aren't the big names. These are the younger guys that are bringing more energy. They're trying to prove themselves, because they have no resume to rest on at this level, right? They're trying to prove themselves at this level. So it's a complete change. And, that's all you can ask for as fans or people following the program, that they see a disaster and they go and say, all right, we're going to change this. Now, is it going to work? If we do, I would put some money down on it, frankly, by using PrizePicks, by the way. Offer code 5 FIVE. But we don't know, right? But the best you can hope for is that, and I think this is where Al Golden frustrated a lot of people by just saying, no, the defense is fine, we're going to keep going. It's like, it's not fine, it's terrible, right? And so I think all you can ask for after what we saw last year is, hey, I'm going to change things, and we definitely got that. DJ, you wanted to get in here?
Well, yeah, no, I was just thinking it's kind of a unique situation, right? Because when you hire young coaches, you also risk the chance that they could, attract bigger jobs and get attention from, bigger schools. Now, Miami is not a small school football-wise by any means, but that's the risk that you run with hiring a younger staff. Do I think it's a bad thing? No. I mean, if one of our coaches, went to a better job or gained a ton of interest, I would view that as a good thing. Yeah. And, the second thing I was going to say is, I think it's easy to, maybe not easy, but if you look at the schedule, you see all these programs, UNC, Clemson, even NC State to some degree, they have had a foundational bedrock that has led them to success for the past couple seasons. And the only thing that worries me with Miami is that they don't necessarily have that bedrock yet under Cristobal with, 2 new coaching staffs in 2 seasons. So it's going to be interesting to see how they fare in games, against Clemson, against North Carolina State. And, maybe we will, contend and, play hard in those games and make it close. But just to see how big of a gap there is or there may not be, because the coaching staff and the program continuity is certainly a big factor in being successful.
Yeah,
No,
I
just
agree.
kind of one more question here, Blue. You probably know. So, what was the kind of level of effort in terms of recruiting? Do you have any from the previous staff? Was it?
Well, I mean, I think I've changed my philosophy, because when someone says, "Oh, he's a great recruiter," if you win, everybody's a great recruiter. I mean, that's my estimation. Mario can go and close a lot of deals, but at the end of the day, if you take a step back and go, "Oh, wait a minute, Miami's 4-7 or 5-6," I don't care what Coach Cristobal says. I don't want to be a part of that. Winning cures all. And I think that all the coaches on staff have that potential. I mean, I think the laughable thing was about Jason Taylor. Oh, he's not going to be a recruiter. He's, this and that. No, come on. That guy walks into your parents' living room and, I mean, things will never be the same. So, I mean, having somebody like that is just so invaluable. And like I said, Timmy Harris, all you have to do is, I mean, especially at the running back position. If he goes into a kid who's a top flight kid up in Georgia or Wisconsin or wherever he goes, say, look at the room. Look at how well we're doing over there. And you could be a part of that. That's how you recruit. I mean, you don't want to get into that situation where you're a salesman, because if you're a salesman, you're not going to be able to get repeat business. I mean, if you start BSing people, you're just not going to be able to. So the answer to that is everybody becomes a really good recruiter when they're winning. And I think in Mario's case, this class is perfect example of what he's about, coming off this year. But a lot of those kids were already kind of committed before the season ended last year. So I just think that this is such an important year, for them to get over the 500 mark, just so they could say, hey, look, we made progress. We're in a bowl game this year. And then everybody's still listening, because you at least, your return on what you did from the year before is visible right there. And I think that's, the proof's got to be in the pudding. I mean, you can't use, we played the tough schedule. Nah, who cares? Everybody plays a tough schedule. I mean, everybody who's moving forward does. I mean, I'm sure NC State and those schools could use the same, thing. And, I mean, it's just my point in this whole matter is that you've got to play football, and you got to develop these kids. And we know that Mawagoa and all these other guys are, were stud high school football players. But like I said, Chantrell Henderson was a stud high school football player. Never really got it done here. He was okay. Sam Shields was a pretty decent high school football player. Got here, they had him out of position. He goes and plays 8 years in the NFL with the Packers as a DB. And I think that Will Mallory's got an opportunity, as I said last week, to be that next guy. But they really didn't use him here. I mean, I don't think. I mean, they didn't target him as much as he should. And, to his fault too, he dropped balls. He dropped balls. But and I said last week, Vish, the two biggest plays that I remember in his career here were long touchdowns that got called back. A 78-yarder and a 67-yarder where he outran everybody. And that's what's going to happen at the next level. He's going to get in a situation where he's got wide receivers that can play, and you got a running game. And what he's going to do is he's going to draw safety coverage, and he's going to blow right by them. And but that has to be utilized here. So he never got coached up. he just matured on his own, I thought.
Yeah, and it feels like that's been kind of a theme for 15 years. Just not maximizing, not getting the right players in, and then what we do get in, not maximizing them. We've had a lot of really good players come through this program that look markedly better on the professional level than they do in college, which should really never happen. This is easier. This should be easier than the NFL, yet they get to the NFL and you see guys showing out. I mean, even someone like Gus Edwards had to leave the program, and then
still in the NFL.
Yeah, he was the Ravens starting running back. I mean, this is this is the level of kind of roster mismanagement.
KJ Osborne, who saved somebody last week.
Yeah, no, he's done
a car thing.
Yeah, he pulled someone out. Yeah, he pulled some out of a fiery wreck.
Right.
Still got good hands.
Yeah.
No, he actually did. He was only here a year. I feel like he actually did show out here. You could tell.
Him and Rambo did both.
Yeah, but I would say there's a lot of people that spend several years here that just never really reach their potential, and they go to the professional level, and they're like, we have guys all over the NFL still making plays on Sundays. I mean, Rayshon Jenkins put on one of the best defensive against my Cowboys and beat them by himself basically, but put on one of the best defensive performances in NFL history.
Yeah.
Barely. I mean, he was an okay safety here, but he never it's just we can't.
Yeah, there's nothing like that.
Yeah, and then you can do that on the pro level when they get proper coaching, get put in systems that fit their talent better. So yeah. Well, let's hope we can get back to that. All right, before we wrap, we're about at the hour mark. Before we wrap things up, Blue DJ, any thoughts on what's going on the scroll there, which is our basketball team? Obviously, big injury against Duke to Norchad O'Meara, but I guess I'll start with you, Blue. Do you have any thoughts on this game against Drake on Friday night? Obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I'll be there. I'm going to do more in-depth coverage of both the men's and the women's teams later in the week. So stay tuned for that. But
gotta shoot well. Gotta shoot well.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, with O'Meara questionable, and even if he plays, he's not going to be anywhere near what they need. He's their rebound dude. So I think that they need all these guys to step up. I think that they have to shoot. I mean, it's imperative that they're going to have to, hit the three. Remember, Pack went out also. He was hurt. So, I mean, you can't – a team that's thin, and they are, you can't keep losing dudes. I mean, not just reserve kids. And, and then the women are really, the 18-12 year key win over the number 1 seed Virginia Tech, which they beat earlier in the year. And so they also know, I mean, they have it's going to be it's going to be a tough ride for them, but, just for her to get there year in and year out is a testament to what that program. And, it's good to see Miami in both women and men in the postseason. I mean, whether they go, 1 deep, 2 deep, whatever they go, at least they're there. I mean, and we found out how important it is not to be in the postseason with the football program last year, because every damn game you watched, you go, oh my gosh, how are they there? And you don't want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just for the men, so Drake is actually a similar team to Miami. They play a lot of wings. They shoot the 3 ball really well. So I guess the concern, obviously, outside of O'Meara being injured, and if he does not play or is not 100%, you're going to have the team rebound, because he basically rebounds for the whole team. But outside of that, this Miami team has not been good defensively this year.
No.
It's all been scoring. And if they let Drake get going from outside, and you can
could
get
be tough.
Well, I mean, I feel like Miami can score with anyone. They've shown that this year. They have one of the top offenses in the country, but but you really want to hopefully play better defense than that to avoid, they can win a game, and they've done this multiple times, 85-80 or 90-85. Miami is capable of winning those games. They've done it. You don't want to give up 80 and then try to outscore that. So hopefully they can, with the postseason, they can get there's no reason they should be this poor defensively. I understand sometimes with the size mismatch, it'll happen. Like, there's no rim. Even O'Meara's not really a rim protector. He does a good job with body positioning, but at the end of the day, he's still 6'7". So it's not hard to shoot over him when guys get to the rim.
And Duke's big men just crushed them.
I mean, after you didn't have him in there, it was basically over. But he does a good job of post defense because he's big and he can force them out of position. But in terms of like help defense and, guards are able to get to the rim and elevate and score because he's not going to, necessarily be able to get up there and be the rim protector. So there's an element of that, but they got to keep people out of the paint. Nigel Pack's defense isn't great. And he's also undersized, so it's tough. And Drake has one of the best mid-major players in the country. Is actually the coach's son.
Yeah.
That'll be an interesting one. I'm assuming Wugga will have to guard him initially because he's 6'7". If they play smaller, maybe Jordan Miller.
Jordan Miller's been, I think, the MVP down the stretch.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, that's why offensively there's so many weapons. That's almost like someone will score, the points will get there, but the defense is the problem. And if they can play good defense, they can frankly dominate Drake because Drake is not going to run the ball through the post and really take advantage of Miami's lack of size, but they can shoot over the top of them. It reminds me a little bit of Virginia Tech and how they played Miami and played them tight. Miami was able to win those games, but just, dropping 3-pointers on them. Remember that was the game at home where Nigel Pack scored like 12 points in a minute or whatever and blew the game open. But Virginia is very similar to that. They have a bunch of wings that can shoot, and the coach's son DeVries, now he's 6'7", can shoot the three, but he's good off the ball, creates his own shot. They're gonna have to defend him. And the other thing with Omier, if he's not 100%, which is hard to imagine he'd be 100% if he was playing, Miami does a lot of aggressive trapping with him, and you kind of got to wonder if they're going to be able to do that without him healthy, if he's able to move and kind of get out there and actually trap, because that is how they force. One thing Miami does do well defensively, force a lot of steals, turns it into offense. So we'll have more on that later in the week. And then for the women, I mean, great job getting to the tournament. Their first game, they're the 9 seed, so Oklahoma State's technically a higher seed. I actually think that's a really good matchup for the women. Oklahoma State does not have a lot of size, and Miami has 3 bigs they can run in there.
Yeah. They got some outside shooting too. So.
Yeah, and got outside shooting and just a lot of depth. So I like the matchup in the first game, but after that, you're playing at Indiana.
Yeah, forget it.
And this is at some point they have to stop doing this in women's basketball. Like you can't. I get it, and I don't know. I don't think Miami would beat Indiana at a neutral site. Frankly, I don't think they'd beat them in Coral Gables. Indiana's that good, so I don't think it actually matters. But it's a death sentence. When you get the 8-9 spot, last year it was South Carolina, this year it's Indiana, but there should not be a system where you're like, oh, I'd rather be the 10 seed than the 9 seed, because maybe you can upset a 2 seed on the road, but a 1 seed, there's a gap there,
huge gap.
Yeah, and it's just at some point they have to stop doing that and just either send them to neutral sites, because this is like asking. I mean, you don't want to create a situation where I was actually hoping we'd somehow slide to the 11. Somewhere. It makes the first game much harder because now you're playing a 6 seed. But if we get through that, we could beat a 3 seed on the road. But Indiana's probably a bridge too far. Still, like Blue said, this is 2 years in a row with both programs in the tournament, and there were some dry spells recently, but they both, even though there's a lot of players leaving both programs, they seem to kind of be on a treadmill now of moving forward. So this might be here for a while. People have to get used to Miami in the postseason.
Yeah.
DJ, I have no idea if you have any thoughts on Miami basketball.
Well, no, I have been watching them, and we kind of talked a little bit about it off air for the men, and they kind of have hit a wall a little bit over these last couple of games. They've played a little bit sluggish, so they just need to come out stronger on Friday, and it's a bad time for them to hit that wall, so to speak. But I mean, it's a long season, and that will happen. So I'm curious to see how they play. I really am, because we've seen on many occasions this season, very high highs and some low lows. So hopefully they can bring their A game and advance farther. Because that Duke game, I mean, credit to Duke. They are a good program, but man, it was frustrating.
Yeah.
It was. There were so many. I mean, obviously, when you lose Omier, and Duke is one of the biggest teams in the country. So I'm like, all right, we're basically playing with a small forward at center for the whole game.
Everybody knew what was going to happen, but we couldn't stop it.
Well, there was no. I mean, we just don't have the size.
Yeah.
But then, I thought that one's such a tough game to read because I thought we played hard, played well, stuck in the game. It was a 1-point game late, and there was, just to be blunt, an atrocious officiating possession where there was a hell ball they called a foul on. Then there was a ball where Duke clearly knocked it out and they gave him the ball back, and then they called a foul on a 3-point shooter. Both those fouls in that sequence were on Wong. He had to go sit out. They shot 3 free throws. All of a sudden, you're down 4 with Omier out injured and Wong sitting on the bench in foul trouble. And that's kind of where Duke actually put the game away. So, but there's no moral victories. And Jordan Miller said after the game, Norwich Had's important, but we come here to win games, and you got to win with whoever's there. And I think they'll take that mentality into this weekend. And yeah, I mean, I will say Drake is everyone's favorite upset pick right now. If you kind of read around, but
I have seen that, yeah.
But I actually
Drake and Penn State are the 2 big teams that everyone's talking about.
Penn State's on a roll too.
Yeah, but I actually think this Miami team is well suited to play mid-majors because they're used to playing up and down, and they're used to playing open ball, and they're used to playing small ball. And mid-majors tend to have success when they go against these bigger teams that aren't used to chasing them around,
right?
And they get buried under 3-pointers, and and against teams that aren't as good offensively as Miami. And then you fall behind early because you're messing up your defensive coverage because you're not used to the power forward being 6'3" and hitting 3-pointers, and then for teams that aren't good at offense, that can take a long time to make those points up. For Miami, that doesn't usually tend to be an issue. So I'm more confident than I think most everyone else is in this team to at least win on Friday, but we'll see.
At least you'll be there.
Yeah. Oh boy, if they lose, man, you'll see me exiting that arena.
You'll be a tour guy in Albany from now on. You'll say, you know what? I got a bunch of places you can go.
Man, if we lose on Friday, you will see me like on American Airlines website 10 minutes later trying to figure out when I can move my flight up to get the hell out of there. It's going to be freezing. There's going to be snow everywhere. It'll stop snowing, but
it's not going to be fun. It's
going to be a nasty time. And if we lose the first game on top of it, that'll be kind of time to leave.
That'll be the icing on the cake, so to speak.
I did briefly look to see how easy it would be to get to Bloomington from there. Where the women are playing on Saturday. So the games are offset, but it wasn't really feasible. Although to go there and try to come back, but if the men bounce out, maybe I'll see if I can get over there to watch it.
Yeah, might as well. Might as well
I could go to Bloomington. I could just go to Bloomington, then come back to DC from there on Sunday. Versus definitely not staying in Albany. If we lose on Friday, I'm getting out of there. Because right now I'm not leaving till Monday morning. Because I don't. If we win, you don't know when the game would be on Sunday, so you can't. Like last year when we played Auburn, it was like at night, like at I think 8 p.m. So you don't know until they have the matchups. They don't set the game times on Sunday. So you just have to assume I might have to be here all day.
Yeah.
And so I took the first flight out on Monday morning. But if we lose on Friday, there's no chance I'm staying there. I have exit stage left back to here. So
let's
we'll
hope
see.
that's not the
Hopefully
case.
That doesn't happen, and I can at least see us win a game there.
Let's hope you enjoy your stay and that it's a long one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As good as it can be in freezing Albany, New York, but
I have never been to Albany, and I've heard a lot of Albany slander in the last 24. Like that place is horrible. Why are they playing there? And I'm just
it's not the best, but I will say college hockey has also had Albany as a host for the Frozen Four, so I guess it's a popular venue for.
I think
for
the arena is supposed to be good.
Yeah,
it's not like it.
NCAA wrestling there about 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know it's right by the state capitol, so I guess I'll check that out.
At least they have the venues, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, by the way, if the Canes win both games, they will be in Kansas City in 2 weeks. So,
would you go out there?
I mean, I'm almost committed at this point.
True, yeah, fair enough.
I'm assuming it would be. Maybe it'd be. You know what? It might actually be hard to get to Kansas City. I'll have to look into that because this was shockingly easy. The number of flights from DC to Albany on little puddle jumpers. So Kansas City might
Kansas
actually
City's kind of a.
But it's a bigger city. You figure it'd be easier to get to, but it might not be just because this was kind of easy. But anyway, yeah, I think that would be the plan. And if the women somehow pull off a massive upset, they'll be in Greenville. I feel like if the women beat Indiana, beat Oklahoma State, Indiana, I have to go to Greenville instead. At that point, you got you got to honor that.
Warmer.
You got to honor that, and I can probably maybe drive. I don't know. Anyway, those are good problems to have. So let's hope the teams don't bounce out early. Anyway, like I said, I'll have more coverage later in the week, my midweek stuff. Blue actually touched on this earlier. Just Jazz isn't here, but we'll throw a little baseball out there. The Canes that lost 4 or 5 going up against NC State this weekend. NC State was undefeated, won the series, so big kind of turnaround there. Although the Sunday game was a complete disaster, so still got to figure out the rotation. But that was a needed win. This weekend they're hosting Virginia Tech, who's ranked, and then next weekend they're at Wake Forest. The weekend after that, at Wake Forest, who's the top 5 team. If they didn't win the series this weekend, this thing could have spiraled all the way out of control. So it's a big win. But anyway, we'll have more than that on my midweek, whatever we're calling it thing. Anyway, Blue, DJ, any final thoughts before we kind of sign off here?
No, you think we covered it all.
No, we've covered everything from TV contracts to flights to Bloomington, Indiana. So.
Yeah.
Thank you for staying, Al. That was a very random hour and 9 minutes, but we tried our best.
Well, we got conference alignment, we got coaching stuff, we got both hoops programs, we got baseball. You get a full service show here.
Thank goodness for Blue, because he had a lot of useful information that, quite frankly, I didn't have.
I'm sure it was a collaboration of everybody, like it is every week.
True.
That's what makes the show so good.
It's fun. I have every single week. I look forward to this. So.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's a good time.
Enjoy.
All right, yeah. Well, thanks
guys.
everyone for listening and watching, and watch our F1 show hitting the Apex Wednesday at 8 p.m. And I'll have some stuff, scheduled and published on the YouTube channel previewing the basketball and from Albany as well, assuming I can, not freeze to death. But those will be from indoors, I'm assuming. Anyway, other than that, we'll catch you guys next week, same time, same place.
The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rig Kane Show. Yeah. The 6 Rings Kane Show. You know.